Alright, last night we watched the first two episodes of Tsurune before dropping it, and we didn't feel like doing this, but now here we are anyways. Uh, it was, it's free, again. What did you think?
I mean, I think the guys are prettier than Free.
Yeah?
Yeah. Because Free is like, they're swimmers, so they just like strip. And in this show, it's like, it's all about the form.
It was really fucking hilarious in episode 1 when, like, less than 2 minutes in, a guy pulled up his shirt to show off his fucking sick abs.
Yeah.
Because in Free, the whole conceit of the show was man service. It was, they're swimmers, so they have an excuse to be naked all the time. In this show, it's like, it's still man service, but it's not, it's a lot more subtle. It's just like, when you shoot arrows, sometimes you have one of your arms out, and
yeah, I'd say it's a little bit more tasteful than Free in that regard. If that's something you're looking for.
I just thought this was super fucking generic. Like, in terms of sports shows, like sports narratives, it was just like very boilerplate. The characters only really had personality insofar as it would contribute to creating a sports narrative.
Mm-hmm.
And like it was just very melodramatic, like right off the bat.
Yeah.
Just heavy on the melodrama, the sweeping music and everything, like really over the top with the attempt at feels in a show that I didn't feel it earned it. It reminded me a lot of Hinamatsuri, which was the same thing with girls doing like a weird dance club, and just the sappiness is way more than I can handle. But we ended up watching 2 episodes, even though I probably would have dropped it like 6 minutes in. So what did you like about it enough to get us through 2 whole episodes?
It was pleasant. It was slow, but like in the right way. Like, if it's going to tell a story like this, it was slow. It was pretty to look at. I wasn't offended by its existence. I'm always curious about shows like this and, like, what makes them tick, because I haven't really seen a lot of, like, man service shows. I haven't really watched any Free or anything like that, so it's just like, what does KyoAni throw into these shows that makes them so successful?
Yeah, I mean, you've watched Free now. Like, by watching these 2 episodes. It's the exact same show. Like, the way that it introduces all the characters, the pacing of the first 2 episodes, just like what happens, it's almost the exact same. Going by my memory of Free. But like, yeah, I guess I see what you're saying. Like, I felt the same way about Free. Like, I felt all the same emotions of like, this is tolerable in every way. Like, there's nothing wrong with it other than it feels as though it's made for a very specific type of person, and if you're not that person, it's just not made for you, And like, that's fine. I watch tons of shows like that are aimed at me, but like, this one's not. And not even particularly just because it's a man service show, but just like the type that it is, where like it's about this kind of cloyingly melodramatic atmosphere about like a bunch of like people being like kind of sad sacks about their like, because the main character, I don't want to get into the plot, I don't care enough, I don't want to make this any longer than it has to be. I don't mean to make it sound like this show is really terrible or anything. I was just very bored by it, and I felt like, left to my own devices, I wouldn't have made it so far.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
No, I mean, it seemed like you would have been willing to watch even more of it.
Yeah, I probably would have, just to throw on, because like, you don't really have to think a lot about it. And again, it was pretty.
But not so much that you felt you would watch it on your own time.
I wasn't connected to it or invested in it.
Yeah, it was.
I didn't really like the main character. I thought he was kind of a pussy.
You kind of gave this, like, you said something like, if, we were going to watch it together, you would watch more of it. But if you had to watch it by yourself, it wouldn't be worth it for you, basically.
I just, like, don't have that much time to watch anime by myself. And I already am trying to watch all of Precure.
Yeah.
So.
More invested in Precure.
I want the cred. I want to be able to say I watched it all. And, I don't really think I'd get any credit out of saying I watched all this show.
No.
Sweet Fujo credit.
It's funny because I feel like this show is significantly less popular than Free just because it is so much less obvious. It's like, I don't really see the point in making a man service show if you weren't going to make it. Like, because it's very different from something like, even though the tone of it is fairly similar to like Hibike Euphonium in terms of like the way it looks and feels and the pacing and directing, it just isn't nearly as deep as that show in terms of its character writing and stuff, where like, I feel like if they were gonna tone down the fan service, they needed to make the characters more interesting, and not like, particularly the side characters just feel so one note. Like, you got like the bubbly one and the really pissed off one, who's just, his whole personality is that he's pissed off, like he's just that guy. And then you've got like, somewhat sadistic glasses boy. It was just like, oh, I see who these people are, Anyway, that's Tsurune. Catch you in the next one. We had a short list of shows. You look so tiny. How come you look so small in the camera? You look like you barely exist. We had a short list of second chances shows that were ones that like we dropped pretty early, but people were saying like, oh, you gotta watch more, it's
It's the funniest show of the whole year, guys.
And one of those was Hinamatsuri, which we had initially dropped after the first episode back, I think during Randomly Watched Seasonal Bullshit, or maybe even just at random.
I think it was a seasonal bullshit.
I didn't remember a single goddamn thing about it, other than that it was about a gangster and a little girl. I didn't remember that she was psychic or an alien or anything. I was just like, it was a guy with a girl, and I remember thinking it was ugly and unfunny. And people were like, the first episode's not indicative of what it's like all the way. You gotta watch more. Funniest show. Econ was all fucking sucking its dick while he was here.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
A bunch of other people online were like, oh, Hinamatsuri, dude. How could you drop it? I need to know your thoughts on it. So we picked it back up. And we gave it the proper 3-episode test. And it is super boring. And I don't get it. What is it about this show that people find so engaging?
It's the white outline.
Is that...
People...
the white... People do
really
like almost
it.
Every show that has those white
like,
outlines,
wow.
don't they?
I love anime with a white outline.
I wonder if I like any of those shows with the white outlines. I guess Horomusuko kind of has that. So, I will say that I really like the lolly bartender. Because she's cute, and she's a bartender. She has a great bartending outfit, super memorable.
And those scenes, they didn't really drag on as compared to the rest of the show. It's like, this is the gag. We're going to put her in some compromising situations, and we're going to give her a good character to bounce off of. It's
also considerably, more kind of fucked up. Because, the main show is, a couple of aliens who are totally uninteresting. Hina and the other girl, I don't give a single fuck about. They're not funny. They're not charming. They're not that cute. They're just kind of brats. They don't really lead to funny situations. Hina's voice is kind of cute, but it's not funny. That's the weirdest thing is, the character designs in this show I really hate. I think that they have, weird faces, and I find the main guy, he doesn't look funny. I can't see... I think I said once that you can't be funny without looking funny. And everybody said, what the fuck are you talking about? That makes no sense. But it does make sense, goddammit. You can't be funny if you don't look funny. And he doesn't look funny. To me, anyways. Does this make sense to you?
Yeah, sure. I agree that, every comedian Just watch a stand-up special. They all are fucking funny-looking motherfuckers.
Right.
Every female comedian's a fat, disgusting slob. Like,
well,
yeah.
I don't necessarily mean... You don't have to look, like, funny, like, audaciously so. I
No,
just mean
I
that you
know.
have to look like someone who can be funny,
Yeah,
you know?
Like, I agree. I'm just relating it to personal, real-life experience. And just, like, you know, the gangster papa... You know, there's this manga where it's like a house husband who has like a gangster aesthetic, and he like is a house husband, and he cooks and cleans for his wife, and it's like that's funnier. It's a funnier usage of that trope.
Never heard of that. What's it called?
I don't fucking know. I read like fucking 2 chapters of it because it was on Reddit.
So I don't find the aliens funny. I don't find the Yakuza guy funny. The weird thing is that the show, only like half the time is it even trying to be funny. The other half, it has these weird sentimental scenes that I just thought were fucking weak and lame. Like, the first half of episode 3 is all about the one girl like becoming homeless and like hanging out with these homeless people.
That episode was awful.
Yeah, it was presented as like this really heavy-handed, emotional, like fucking journey of her relating to these homeless dudes, and it was really weird because it was like, I don't care about this character or these homeless people. Like, I don't understand.
It was a really awkward situation to put her in that kind of situation, and like it doesn't really teach you anything about her character because
no, and it was lame. Like there's this part where they ask her to sing, and she starts singing this like obnoxious children's song, and then like all the old men are like weeping because they're like, oh, it reminds us of our granddaughter. And it was like, this wasn't even played for laughs. It was like played for sentimentality. And I'm like, that's stupid. That's just dumb, you know? So...
And then they had money and they spent it all on booze, and it just like it left a bad taste.
Yeah.
In my mouth.
There were moments that were kind of funny, like some of the animation gags, because there's moments where the animation's like really good, and sometimes that can be fun, I guess.
Yeah, like in the second episode where they're having their little duel, and it's like, try not to look this way while they use their psychic powers to control gravity or whatever. And it's like, oh, they make funny faces.
I didn't find that funny until the moment when the girl's like neck broke. But
I mean, it's always funny when somebody's neck breaks.
There's
always good.
I just like everything that happened. I was just like, oh, all right. Like, the end of episode 3 is just like Hina just breaks everything in his apartment, and it was just like a very cliched scenario where we watch like minutes on end of her just breaking shit in the apartment, and you know, at the end he comes home, and like the episode just ends with him opening the door, not even seeing the mess or anything. It's just like he came home. It's like, well, that's not a punchline, you know, like we already knew he was gonna see it, but like if we don't have there's no actual gag. We just see that he's going to see it, and then the episode ends. It's like, where was the joke there? Again, the only part of this show I really enjoyed was Lolly Bartender, because she looks cute, and I love bars, and I love jokes about bars. But that's like purely aesthetic. And I didn't enjoy enough of the rest of it to watch more. I just don't get it. Like, I don't find the humor, like, the timing of the jokes, the style of humor, what is happening, like...
Yeah, it might just work with some other people better.
I mean, clearly, this show has an 8.3 on Mal, which is a really high score for a comedy. And I'm thinking about Uchu Senkan Tiramisu, which I thought was the funniest shit in the world.
And you were laughing your ass off the whole way through.
That show was fucking hilarious.
I mean,
this one
isn't just an outright complete comedy. It's supposed to be. I don't really know what the show is supposed to be.
I don't either. Like, it's weird how it just gets sentimental out of nowhere, and you're just like, oh, is that what we're doing? Like, why? Why are we getting sentimental? And then, like, a goofy slapstick weird shit scene, and it's like... It's hard, like, I can't take the serious scenes seriously when none of the characters are even remotely grounded, you know? They're like a bunch of fucking weird aliens and mobsters and shit, and like, and then suddenly they're having like this emotional scene with homeless dudes, and I'm like, what is going on? Like, why are we getting sentimental right now? I don't know, man. This is one of those things where I feel very distant from the people who have watched it and loved it. Where like, I can see that other people are just getting something very different out of it than I am, and that's fine. You know, if you enjoy the show, good for you. I know there's going to be people who are like disappointed that I didn't like this show, and I don't know why. I don't know why you get disappointed that a guy didn't like the show you liked, but like I don't understand.
I get disappointed when you don't like the shows that I like.
When has that ever happened?
I don't know. I can relate to that feeling. You're like, oh. You like go to a top 10 list and you're like, oh, I want my favorite movie to be on this list, and he puts it on his like worst movie list, and you're like, maybe my taste is just shit.
I never feel that way because there's never been.
Validate your opinion.
Well, there's just never been a critic I agree with at all. It's the only reason I make videos. Yeah. You know, is that
I understand both sides of the coin.
I don't go into anything expecting to agree with it.
I don't know. I'm a little disappointed watching the show, hearing all these great things about how it's like, oh, the humor is like so cutting edge, and like you'll like it.
It's
like,
one of those things that makes me feel more distant from humanity. It's like when everybody's telling me, this is how I feel a lot of the time, when everyone's like, oh, you gotta check this thing out, it's so good, and then I watch it and I feel nothing. And I'm just like, am I a part of are there two species of humanity and they haven't realized it, and I'm part of the other species, like the one that likes tiramisu? Is that the minority species?
It's the cat people and the reptilians.
Which one am I?
Obviously, the reptilians love the show.
Well, I guess that's it. I guess we've somehow prattled for 11 minutes, like, going, what? So,
it looks like they all have, like, diseased gums and have really puffy faces.
I hate their faces so much.
I hate your face.
Damn.
I'm joking.
Alright, that's it. Good lord. Well, we just watched the first 13 episodes, which are all the ones that were released in 2018, of That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime. And that's a sentence I didn't expect to say.
No way.
How far did you think we'd make it into this show?
Not even a whole episode.
So I read the manga, the first volume of the manga of this way back for Manga Mondays. I had predicted that this show would have a very successful anime adaptation, and I was correct. What I didn't expect is that it would be better than the manga, and in fact, pretty enjoyable. For what it's worth, it's basically exactly the same. Like, almost word for word, it's the same thing as the manga. The difference is mostly the visuals, which the anime just looks really fucking good, particularly in episode 1, where the visual direction was just off the chain. Like, tons of unique, interesting visuals, all these, like, different styles, like, almost going into different mediums entirely. Mm-hmm. Just really inventive ways of representing what was going on, because for a lot of it, the main character does not have sight. He's, like, speaking to this sort of inner voice, and there's all these, like, what would you call them, diagrams on screen and shit.
Yeah,
and,
like diagrams, infographics.
Infographics going around, and they look awesome. Like, it's not necessarily a style I've never seen before, but just the aesthetics are so on point. And, like, every image of the first episode looks great. The backgrounds even look great.
Yeah, that was surprising.
What the fuck? An isekai where the backgrounds are impressive? I was like, what's going on? So just, like, the sheer strength of visuals in the first episode made me like, I kind of want to see more of that. And I'm not going to pretend that it holds up in the visual department to that extent. Like, no. Not to say that it ever looks like shit. It looks fine. But, like, that first episode is on another level. And it's also not as though it's like a hard cut in episode 2 that suddenly it's not like that. or really ever. I mean, the visual direction of the show is strong, like, all the way through. Even episode 13 that we just watched had some really badass action scenes, some cool cinematic shots and angles, and I'm just like, I can't believe it. Like, I can't believe
very impressive.
I can't believe they put so much effort into that time I got reincarnated as a slime. And, like, I'm even over here looking at Shield Hero, which I like, and is like an isekai that I actually like the story for being kind of unique, and that show didn't impress me with the visuals at all. This one, legitimately, the visuals alone, like, made up for the story being pretty generic and standard. You know, like, if it weren't for how good the first episode looked, I probably would not have continued it. But when it looks that good, and it's a charming, cute story. How do you feel about the slime?
It's fun. It's really fun. I like that they take all, like, the generic tropes and ideas and world building of fantasy, but kind of, like, they go into each race and they have characters of each race, and it's, like, it's familiar because they're talking about, like, orcs and ogres and stuff, but, like, just the way they build each civilization. I really like the idea of, like, when they give somebody a name, they're able to evolve.
That's one of the most fun things in the show.
Yeah.
Is just seeing characters be given names and then, like, change dramatically, and that sort of evolution where characters who seem like they're not gonna matter turn out to be important and interesting. And, like, as a result, there's a fucking massive cast.
Yeah, even just, like, the first village we were introduced to is just, like, the goblins, but they go out of their way to, like, give each goblin character its own design.
Yeah.
And, like, you'll even see some of, like, the same background characters recurring, and, like...
Right.
It's cool, because it really feels like a lived-in universe.
And, like, you'll meet a character and not think much of it, but then... Because of the fact that, like, so basically what the show is about is a, like, 37-year-old virgin salaryman gets stabbed in the streets, and as he's dying, his train of thought, he happens to get reincarnated as a slime in another world, but the things he's thinking about as he's dying end up becoming, like, this insane, amazing suite of powers that he is reborn with in his slime form. So he's, like, unfathomably OP. Like, literally untouchable god mode going into this other world.
Yeah, because he's like Grand Sage.
Yeah, he's got all the powers. It literally is like he didn't quite make it to Grand Sage. He was like, he said like, oh, I was close to being that or
yeah,
whatever.
but I think in the next life they kind of gave that to him.
Like, the implication is that, like, he literally has those, like, the so-called wizard powers that come from, you know, being a 40-year-old virgin or whatever. It's pretty fucking funny.
It's really funny.
But, yeah, so he goes to another world and he's, like, insanely OP. And,
the first episode was hysterical, because he was, like, telling his friend to fucking wash his hard drive.
Yeah, to throw his computer in the bathtub and fucking don't look at it, just throw it out, like, as he's dying. Yeah. In general, this show, it's interesting that he's a 37-year-old protagonist, and, like, you know, he's reincarnated as a slime, which is the base monster from Dragon Quest, and, like, all of these generic fantasy isekai, usually they take most of their stuff from Dragon Quest. Dragon Quest is the penultimate Japanese fantasy RPG, and, like, you know, it's not as known in the West, especially as, like, a nostalgia property, I think, because of the fact that Dragon Quest only started coming here later. Well, I mean, it wasn't as popular here
what established fantasy and, like, that kind of stuff was different for us. Like, we have Elder Scrolls, we have Lord of the Rings, like, that's more of, like,
I mean, Lord of the Rings. I mean, Dragon Quest obviously pulls from Lord of the Rings. But it has,
you know...
It has, it's...
You could tell, like, the differences between, like,
right.
media that's completely influenced by Dragon Quest versus...
You definitely get this sense when you watch Japanese fantasy stuff that it's, like, Dragon Quest is at the forefront of the minds of the creators. And, like... When it's a slime, then that's...
It's great.
Obviously a Dragon Quest reference, but,
and
like...
they even, like, do memes.
Right,
like...
but it's also dated. Like, so,
yeah.
like, it's interesting that the character's older and it's all very old references and Dragon Quest stuff, because it gives you this sense that the show is kind of made... I don't know who wrote it, but, like, it feels like it's made for, like, older millennials. like people who are in their late 30s, who have grown up with video games, who have like, who are already considerably into their lives. And I think that might be part of why they made the main character quite so OP, because it's like, let's skip to adulthood, kind of. Like most older isekai or shows of this nature, if they're following a teenage protagonist, it's more about their growth. It's more about like a young person, becoming a man and like coming into their own and being able to fight their own battles. In this, it's like the main character's already a grown-ass man. He already
similar to Shiroi from Log Horizon, how he's like already been an established player. And
yeah. But even in that case, Shiroi came off as more like late 20s. This guy is in his late 30s. And they go
even further with him.
And so like and it's not even that it's completely unearned, because the first episode, basically he gets incarnated as a slime in this cave, and yes, he does have like a crazy amount of powers that he got from coming into this world in terms of like his basic abilities, but he also spends a full month just grinding in a cave right at the start. So like, it's not just that he's OP for no reason. He literally grinds, like RPG style grinds, for a fucking long time before he even starts doing anything. And in a way, it kind of feels like this whole show is just grinding. Like, it never feels like we've made it to the actual plot or the actual fight. It just feels like we're constantly setting things up. Constantly building the base of power, constantly setting up world-building tidbits, and like we haven't even really, 13 episodes in, stepped into the realm of what any of this is about, or like what any of it matters. It's just grinding. And it kind of feels like that, like how people talk about how like one of the things that can be great about grinding is that you get that it's almost meditative, like you go into a trance. This show feels like that. I think this is an Iyashike show, is what I'm trying to build towards. This show, to me, is an Iyashike, a healing anime. Because even though there's action, and there are some dark moments, the overall tone of the show is very lighthearted. The slime, our main character, Rimuru, his whole goal is to just create peace. He's just like, yeah, I want everyone to get along. I'm gonna take over everything and make everybody get along and, like, end war. And
you said it was like the communist version of Log Horizon.
So, to get into that, yeah, so, whereas Log Horizon is, like, the libertarian utopia show, this is, in many ways, the polar opposite and is kind of the socialist utopia show. Because, Rimuru is a dictator. Like, he literally rules by force of power. He just is the strongest, and therefore people listen to him. But what's interesting about the show is that because he's a slime, rather than working his way up through human society, he's working his way up through monster society. So the first people he encounters are low-level goblins, and it's just like a goblin village asking him for help, and they're basically like, we can tell that you are mega powerful, so we give ourselves over to you, just tell us what to do. And he constantly is insisting that, like, he provide food, shelter, clothing. Like, those are his three things. Everybody needs food, shelter, and clothing. So, like, immediately he's out to build the village, and, like, he's constantly giving people roles. He's very good at delegation, because he was, like, a middle manager. So, like, he's always just delegating roles to people, giving people names, giving them something to do, and taking care of their basic needs. And, like, his whole purpose is to just sort of build a functioning society where everybody has their needs met and works together to get things done and doesn't fight, And, like, he's basically building a socialist utopia. And the show does a good job of, like, making that seem good, because, and again, it's just that, like, they're all monsters, so they have very simplistic needs. Like, as long as they are in service of something greater than themselves, they're happy,
and they're
basically.
Completely collectivist. Like, they don't even have names. And, like, the wolf society, I guess you can call it, like, they give one name to the pack leader, and then all the other wolves are able to evolve because they're like,
Right.
we share a clan name, we share this.
Yeah, whatever. If you give one of us power, we all have that power, and there's a lot of that power sharing and like they also have like psychic communication abilities. The wolves. Yeah, it's really interesting how a lot of it is just about like gathering power and spreading it amongst the people. It's always about like that dispersal. I don't know how intentional this was on the author's part, but it really does feel like it is the socialist version of Long Horizon, and it's really funny to think of it that way. But I don't mean to politicize everything I watch.
No,
it's just fun.
I mean, I think there is some intentionality, and at least like this is how this author would perceive like an ideal society of this sort. Like, obviously, he's kind of writing his own perspective into it.
Yeah, it feels very, again, like Log Horizon. Yeah, very idealistic in that it's like, I feel like this author thought if I went into another world, I would use the knowledge I have to make it good for everybody, to just like make it so everybody could live together peacefully in this society, and that's sort of the mission. And it's really interesting because the show doesn't shy away from getting like really dark and violent, but like it always happens in just little tiny bursts. It never gets edgy. It never has that feeling of like it's trying to be like, ooh, dark. It's just like, yeah, in order for this story to make sense, people have to die sometimes, and sometimes in gruesome and brutal ways, but like it's always kind of like that happens and you're like, okay, I understand the stakes, but let's not dwell on that. This is ultimately a show about good vibes,
Like, they even had, like, the waifu character die.
Yeah, like, mega fucking weird. Like, I still don't know if she's, like, dead, but that was one of the most unexpected things I have seen in a while. Right. Because I still don't know. Like, again, this show feels like it's just building up. Like, it feels like it's been 13 episodes of fucking edging, basically. Because, and it's such a weird feeling, because you start off, and the main character's in a cave, and there's no real narrative momentum to the story. It's like, he's just kind of hanging out in this cave, collecting shit, and then he meets this dragon, this extremely powerful dragon, and the dragon's like, I can't get out of this barrier, and so the slime's like, hey, I will eat you and the barrier, and while you're inside of me, we can work, from both the inside and outside, we'll work on getting this barrier down. Eats the dragon's not even mentioned almost after that. Like, it's, it comes up in passing, but, like, dragon has not been relevant to the story so far. So whatever that's building up to, whatever importance the dragon hasn't come up after 13 episodes. So then he goes to Goblin Village, and it's like they're having a problem where these dire wolves attacked them and killed a bunch of their guys. So the dire wolves come to attack the goblins, and you're like, okay, tense moment, a war. Could is he gonna lose a bunch of allies or whatever? The dire wolves attack, he just straight up, instantly murders their leader, takes over the dire wolves.
It was a sick scene.
I'm the leader of the dire wolves now.
It was a sick scene. Chop that dog's head clean off.
Yeah, I knew you'd like that animal violence.
I'm sorry, I just appreciate it.
So now he's captain of the dire wolves, and he just makes them and the goblins friends. Upgrades all the goblins by giving them names, and again, like, there's at this point once more there is no real narrative forward motion. It's just they won, so now he's naming goblins and hanging out, and like initially he's like, he has the goal of trying to find other people from his world, because we find out that there's lots of isekais in this, isekaijin as they are called, in this. So he's like, oh, I'll find more people like me, but he's not really putting forth an effort to do that. And then at some point he states his goal as make this world good for all the people in it. So you're like, okay, I guess now at this point, I don't even know what he's trying to do. He's just doing whatever comes natural, whatever enters his purview as a slime man.
Trying to make the village a good place.
Yeah. So, like,
seems to be his main goal.
So in order to, beef up the village, he goes to the Dwarven capital, and to look for people, and he ends up recruiting these blacksmiths slash like just like all these four dwarves who are like super badass at doing various things that would be helpful for building a village. But they get into a little bit of drama while they're in the dwarf village, where they end up getting exiled by the king, and there's like this little side narrative about how the orc or the dwarf guy had like this rivalry with this I guess he's a magistrate or something.
It's like a nobleman.
Yeah, just like a nobleman working for the king. And again, it feels like it's setting up for something, but then it just kinda ends. Like the king, like there's all this build up to where he's like trying to frame the dwarves for for beating him up and like to get them banished to the mines, but the king like sees through the lie and just banishes the dwarves because he knows they're leaving anyways. And then like after they leave, he tells off the nobleman. It's like, yeah, you piece of shit. I know you were lying.
Right
like, you don't ever show up in front of me again. So like, is that guy gonna be a villain now? Is he gonna come back again? Is he even relevant? We have no idea.
The king
he has
also
not shown up
had,
again.
like, said to some kind of spy or something to keep an eye on the slime, because
right.
the slime was able to create all these potions because of his abilities, which are like he can recreate minerals and stuff that he comes into contact with. So he's able to like make unlimited potions that are really powerful. So like the king was pissed off that he didn't have that connection anymore.
Right.
So like he does have spies, like,
but
and we haven't really
mean?
seen any of it yet. So
we don't know.
Like,
just another thread hanging in the background. So then meanwhile, there's some other guild in this town who's been like investigating the like the surgence of monsters that has happened ever since the dragon disappeared from the cave. So he has these 3 scouts who he sends out into the forest, and this other girl tags along with them, who's like this masked waifu, and she's apparently like the according to this fortune teller, she is destined to be with slime, with Rimuru. So,
dude, when they went to that brothel, there was so many good character designs that they just like threw away.
Hot ass chicks. The show is full. There's just great. A million characters in this show.
Yeah.
Like there's constantly new characters getting introduced. But yeah, so these adventurers come in, and the girl, it turns out, is harboring the spirit of Ifrit inside of her, because there's some demon lord who just like has been randomly isekaiing people trying to get a powerful warrior, I guess. And he accidentally got some girl who was literally like about to die in the fire bombings of which city got firebombed?
Probably Yokohama.
Yokohama?
Yeah, they had fire bombs.
Is that the right one?
There was a bunch of cities that got firebombed.
Well, whatever. It was one of the firebombed cities, and like right as she's about to die, she gets isekai'd. He puts Ifrit's spirit inside her and basically just has her as like his fucking like lackey for a few hundred years. But she gets saved by this hero who is probably the hero who entrapped the dragon from the cave. But
who I think is probably her mom.
Yeah.
She has the same hair.
Well, she just like looks very similar, but I mean,
why
would it
we
be
never
her
see
mom?
her face?
You think they both got isekai'd?
Why not?
Well, anyways.
I don't know. Literally, the fact that they have the same hair is really weird.
They didn't, though. She had, like, lighter hair. She had, like, a brown hair, whereas
both of them had side ponytails. They both had the mom hair.
I think she was just copying her because she admires her.
I don't know. Who do you think she is? She had a mask on.
I have no idea.
She's gonna come back, right?
Of course. But that's another thread that's just hanging out there. But, like... So we've got...
There's so much.
So we've got...
so much has happened in the show, and it doesn't feel like it...
That's the weird thing.
Because it's so slow at some point.
The episodes... You start an episode, and it'll just fly by and feel like nothing happened, but then you think about it, and you're like, well, a lot of stuff happened, it's just that none of it matters. Because there's no stakes. Because every time something happens, it immediately gets resolved. Because, like... So this girl... Ifrit awakens out of her, and just, like, out of nowhere, Ifrit just awakens and goes on a rampage, and there's this huge fight scene between Ifrit and Slime, and, like, one of my problems with this show is that it'll do these extended fights where it's basically just to show you how cool Slime's powers are, because, like, you never feel like he's gonna lose. Like,
no.
there's no reason to think that anything's at stake in these fights, because why would they be? We're not even at a point in the story where anything matters yet. Like, why would we expect Rimuru to be at, have anything to lose? And especially in this fight, he had already evacuated everybody, so it's just him versus Ifrit. And we already know that Rimuru is extremely powerful, but like, we just get to be reminded how strong he is. And then he eats Ifrit out of the girl's body, and now Ifrit's just trapped inside of him. And then the girl is
and we see the dragon again.
Yeah, and that's the one time we see the dragon again.
Didn't you say in the manga that like every like volume ends with the dragon's like retelling of the story?
Yeah, the dragon retells everything that happened to the slime, but from his perspective at the end of the manga.
That's
which
pretty cool.
It'd be cool if they incorporated that in some way into the anime. They haven't yet. But like, so the girl, she's just like dying after having Ifrit removed from her for some reason.
She's really old. That's
was that what was keeping her young?
Yeah, that's also why she was having problems with Ifrit coming out, was because she was getting old and she couldn't control her powers anymore.
So as she's dying, Rimuru just kind of devours her, and now he can turn into an androgynous human form.
But he could also control their gender.
He could control the gender of like his shadow clones, but not of himself, I don't think.
I don't know.
It was odd. But so Rimuru has now this like androgynous form that he turns into, which is cool, but like that art is just,
because like I saw promotional art of his like human form, and I was like, this looks like shit. But then it's like, oh, like, it looks like the girl from before, so it's like, oh, it's nice.
It was really weird, because you think she's gonna be, like, the waifu, and then she's just dead. And then he just eats her, and it's like, oh, I guess she was his body, but she's, like, all over the ED. She's all over the iconography of the show, so it's like, is it just that she's important insofar as she gave him form, or is she going to come back in some way, or, I don't know. She gets eaten, and it's just like, that arc was over. Like, the other 3 scouts just leave. So it's like, they showed up, Ifrit fought, he ate Ifrit, he ate the girl, that arc's done, and let's move on. Like, once again, it's just build-up. It's just more gaining powers. Now he's got all Ifrit's powers. Now he's got all this. So then we enter this next arc, and it's like, there's this giant orc army that's fucking terrorizing everything, and like, he gains a whole bunch of new teammates in the form of these ogres, and then these lizard men, and then the fucking spirit of the forest is joining his side, and it's just more build-up. More build-up. And you know, because of the way that this arc is structured, you know the orcs aren't a threat. Because the orcs can get killed by lizard men, and the lizard men can be, like, the strongest lizard man can be beaten by Gobta, the weakest goblin. So we already know that when they go to battle with the orcs, they're going to slaughter them. So the only part where there's some stakes is when the dipshit lizard man, the son of the king, like, fucks up and goes to fight the orcs by, like, early. They're not supposed to fight them yet, because if one of them gets eaten, the orcs will get stronger. Because whoever the orcs eat, they get their powers, and it spreads to all the orcs at once. So he fucks up, and he has his father, like, imprisoned, and, like, you're thinking, oh, there could be some narrative stakes here, because he's fucked up the whole game plan, right? Well, then, the heroes just find out what's going on their way to go fight the orcs, like, they figure out what's happened.
Yeah.
And then they show up, and, like, one lizard man gets eaten, pretty brutal. But then they just come and save the day. So it's just like, what the fuck? Like, the whole show, there's never anything at risk. And yet, it feels like that's the point. Because most of the time, when there's not huge battles going on, it's just like, slap dick, hoo-hoo, we're having fun. It's a bunch of fucking monsters having a good old time at the fucking, eating the nasty food from the ogre lady. And like,
Gobta dies, but then he comes back.
And yet,
he gets poison resist.
And yet, it's just, like, those scenes work because it's so unique that it's following a bunch of monsters, and, like, they don't necessarily have like human ethics or human expectations of the world. Like, they all act weird and goofy, and Rimuru is just like such a laid back dude that he's just like, oh yeah, more people, yeah, I'll take care of them, whatever. Like, oh, you guys got a problem? I guess I'll go solve your problem. Because like, what else is he gonna do? He's fucking just a slime. Like, he has he has no purpose in this world other than to just do whatever he feels like, and he just likes to help people out. So he just helps people out, and that's it. That's his prerogative, and that's the show, and it's really comfy. And I really think it's basically an Iyashike show. It's a healing. It makes you feel like you're watching a show about, camaraderie.
Wow.
Camaraderie.
It's true.
You know what I mean by
I do.
Camaraderie.
Of course.
Do you have any other thoughts on that time I got reincarnated as a slime?
You told me to remind you that there was the Zetsubo Sensei.
That's
music.
right! This one song! God, so the music that plays in the very first episode of Sayonara Zetsubo Sensei, in like the first scene, and also like all throughout the show, there's a song in this show that is exactly the same. And I don't know if they're both based on like, I don't know, like some traditional Japanese song or something. They don't really sound like it. It just sounds like it happens to have the exact same fucking melody, just by pure chance. But, yeah, I mean, I feel like I could finish this show. It's very watchable. It's just like you start up an episode and then it's over before you realize it.
Oh boy, a whole day went by.
Yeah,
like,
we watched all 13 episodes that we watched today. Like, we literally I think the first like meal we ate today, I was like, which one of these things that we're gonna watch one episode of and give up on should I throw on? And you were like, yeah, throw on the slime. And then we were like, wow, the visuals were really incredible in that episode. Let's watch another. And then we were like, huh, orcs are cute, or goblins are cute, like, whoa, animal violence. Huh, there's tits in this one.
Something for everybody.
And then the scene where...
Especially the old guy.
You have to say again, the ogres.
Oh, alright. The old ogre, specifically, is a Naruto Hokage.
Yeah, he looks like a Hokage.
But all of the ogres are Naruto
They're all
characters.
Narutos.
The blue one's Sasuke.
Around the time where...
The slime is, like, gay for that blue ogre.
He is. Around the time where
really
the lizard men show up to fight and Gobta beats the guy was when I realized, like, this show's not even trying to take itself seriously. Like,
no.
I don't know if maybe early on the author was, like, undecided on how serious he wanted it to be, but by that point it was pretty clear that, like, this is more of a goofy slice of life thing than a serious adventure story. But again... I really feel like we're still in the build-up stage. I feel like... And maybe he just figured, like, if I take my time, I can make this last forever. Maybe that was the thought. Or maybe he just likes having the opportunity to, like, flesh out every single new type of monster that gets added into their army,
I think it's probably more he just, like, really wanted to build this world. Yeah. And he really wanted to explore, like, all the powers that the slime could have.
We haven't even, like, left the forest yet.
I know, it's crazy.
Like, the story starts in this forest, and, like, we had a glimpse of this dwarf place, and then, like, a tiny glimpse of this other kingdom that we know to exist. And then, like, towards the end of episode 13, they're introducing, like, this castle where a demon lord lives. There seems to be a bunch of demon lords.
Yeah, they said there is multiple...
But yeah, it's an interesting show insofar as, like, even though, like, episode 13 was anime in all caps, like, every letter capitalized anime.
3 exclamation points.
Just non-stop crazy ninja battles, fucking big explosions, giant swords, cutting through 100 enemies at once, like, big stupid anime
titties.
Fight. And I was just like, I feel like I'm 13. Like, this is the kind of show that I would have been fucking obsessed with as a teenager.
Same.
So, like, the fact that they could keep me watching it this far in as an adult, I gotta say, I'm impressed. I don't know how they did it. Because it feels immature as shit. But just the fact that the character is older and that it doesn't fuck around with all the, like, basic bitch intro level stuff, I guess is what makes it more fun, you know? Sometimes you just want to be OP. You know, sometimes you just want to tear through everything and have fun with it and not really have those kind of stakes. So, I guess it works for me a lot more than I expected it to. I would give it probably like a strong 7 so far.
Yeah, me too. I don't know if I'm expecting it to stay as good. 'Cause, like, for me, when they started to introduce the ogres, I was like, oh, I'm not so sure about this. And then the lizard people, and I kind of liked, like, the main lizard guy, because he was funny. And it's just, like, I don't know how much longer I can stay invested without, like, more of the narrative threads coming together. But, like, I have really...
Something needs to happen eventually.
Yeah, I have really enjoyed it so far. And
I'm shocked that it's taken, like... Because at the end of episode 13, we're still not even quite at the end of the orc invasion arc, and I thought for sure that would have been wrapped up by the end of episode 13. So, like, that just goes to show how slow the show really is at, like, getting things done, you know? It's weird how much can happen in an episode without feeling like anything happened. Alright, well, we'll have to report on this one again once the season is over. But for now, I guess this counts as a finish. In its own way.
Yeah, because it was a winter.
Finished insofar as we finished the 2018 run of it.
Yeah, exactly.
See you in the next one.